This is Bob Palmer, and you're listening to ZoneTalk by Sport Excel, where the magic of the zone is a game changer. In every episode, we dive into the lives of high performers and learn their amazing strategies so that you can take leadership of your game, your team, and your life.
Today we have Canadian Olympic skeet coach Don Kwasnycia with us, two-time Olympian, three-time Pan Am Games, three-time Commonwealth Games, 20 years national team, 15 national championships, world record in the 200 by 200. At the recent Pan Am Games, his athletes showed very well. Don is also on the Canadian Committee for creating a coach training program. Welcome, Don.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
I'm good, sir. How are you today?
Oh, it's good for a Sunday morning.
Before we get into your role of coaching, I've got some athletes who have a year to wait now for the Olympics. And they were all gun-ho, ready to go, and now they have to wait. Do you have any advice for athletes finding themselves waiting a full year for their big opportunity on stage?
Well, I would say anybody who's involved in any sort of competitive anything is going to get a lot more disappointment than they are going to get rewards, right? To me, I would just look at it as an extra 12 months of training. I get to do a little extra preparation and stay the course and keep going. I'll be that much better in 1 year than I am today.
Did you ever face that kind of disappointment in your sport career?
Oh, absolutely. I was completely ready to shoot the Olympics in 1980 in Moscow when we boycotted. So I was really disappointed after that. Then I was disappointed again in 84 when our selection process got all mixed up and I got screwed out of that one, I guess you could say. So, I mean, yeah, other people who also had the same aspirations that I had, they gave up. They gave up and they said, it's not worth it and everything else. And I just looked at it. I just hunkered down. I said, no, next time, I don't care what happens. Nobody's going to get it's mine, right?
Now, this podcast has many listeners in multiple sports, and probably they don't even know that skeet shooting is an Olympic sport. Can you explain how you got into the sport in the first place?
Oh, boy. Well, I was a little kid. I was always tall for my age. I was about, I guess, maybe 12, maybe 13. And where my parents lived, close to an Air Force base, which had a shotgun range on it that they used for aerial gunnery training for pilots and stuff during the Second World War. So I had an opportunity to either go work there at the gun club on Wednesday after school or Saturdays, or I could go caddy at a golf course. And I knew nothing about golf. And they said, there, you just work for tips. So I said, for sure, I'm not going to make any money there. So I went to the gun club. That was the first of my bad decisions in my life. So I went there and I worked there as a trap boy. You know, we loaded machines and took care of the fields and kept score for the shooters. And, you know, and then eventually one guy just sort of came up to me and offered me, says, hey, kid, have you ever tried this? I said, no. And he says, he gave me a shell and a gun, and I took a shot, and I probably missed. But it was fun. So after that, all of us kids that worked there, we used to gather up the empty hulls that were left on the ground, and we used to sort them all out, and we used to trade them back to the shooters for reloaded boxes of ammunition. So there's 25 shells in a box. So two of us would split a box. We'd each shoot 12 shots, and whoever did the best out of 12 got to shoot the last shot.
How'd that go over with your parents?
Parents were not involved. These were just the guys at the club. But for me personally, my parents did not support my interest in shooting at all. You know, my father, mother both survived through the war, and they didn't like the idea of guns in the house and everything. So for me, I had to hide a shotgun for the first couple of years, sneaking it into the house and hiding it under my bed for the first couple of years until, you know, at some point or other, I decided to come clean with it, and they saw what I was doing. That they didn't agree with it then either, but I did my own thing anyway. I did it anyway.
So you've been a coach. So you've been an athlete. Now you're coaching. What about being an athlete prepared you for that shift in roles?
Well, I saw all the shortcomings that were available to me. We didn't have what was called coaches through my life. They were basically ex-shooters who took on the role of managers. They took care of travel arrangements. They were there to provide opportunities to shoot and everything. But I never had anybody actually show me or tell me how to do it, or how I could do better, or teach me anything. So I was always very curious to hang around with top shooters, because I wanted to hear their experiences. How did they handle being in various stressful situations? How did you, when you come to that crossroad where you either fall on your face or you become a star, how do you handle those various situations? And it was only after that, after talking with all of these different guys, that I started to research more and more material that was available. Some of the very, very early stuff was, nobody did research on shooting, so I researched other sports. Formula One driving, for example. They had a lot of money that they put into R&D. And so there was always books on what it felt like to drive at 300 miles an hour and various things like that.
Can you think of a particular role model in terms of the ideal coach, or was everything kind of built up by you?
I sort of came up with my own thing. I took little bits from all over. I didn't like any one system completely, but I like bits from all various systems. I wanted something that was simple, repeatable, and effective. So, and something that was teachable. So I came up with a model, I think, that allows me to explain things. I said, I don't want anybody to take anything I say at face value. Like, challenge me. Like, if I tell you how to do something, I'm only suggesting that. If you don't think that's the way to do it, show me an alternative. Don't complain. Show me an answer. So show me a better way to do it. And if you're right, we'll do it that way too. And that's sort of been my sort of way of going through it, most of my life, I guess.
Okay, so you've been through all stages of learning, from novice to expert Olympian. What do coaches look for in an athlete to know that they're the right stuff? They've got the right stuff. Do you get a gut reaction? Do you look for specifics?
You look for that fire that somebody has inside them. The skills are teachable, but if they lack the fire, if they lack that desire, or what motivates them to want to exceed, that's the one thing you can't teach them, right? If they don't have that inside them, that little fire, then they'll get good, they'll be fine. But at critical moments in the career, when you're at that crossroad, for example, where you either fall into obscurity or become a champion, you're going to fail, because the motivation, what drives you, is not enough. It's not deep enough.
So when they have that fire, how do they demonstrate it? What starts to happen in their shooting career, or their competitive nature? They
love the work. Some people, they get in and they say, you know what, I want to go to the Olympics. I want to be world champion. They have all these dreams. No, but they're not interested to do what's necessary to get there. When someone has the fire, they're the ones who love to work. They love to go training. They love to do more. They're never happy with what they are. They micromanage their process. No matter how good something is, they want to make it better, easier, more repeatable. Because it's very much a mental sort of a game out there. And if you can stay in that nice little state of everything working for you and it's easy, you're going to go far.
So in the martial arts, we always wanted to go from thinking to non-thinking, where it became reactive and in a very high-powered way. Is there anything you do in your training that takes the athlete from a multi-step process to just doing it?
Yeah, I always think about when we're learning to drive. Think when you're first learning to drive your dad's car. At the beginning, you couldn't listen to the radio. You couldn't have your arm out the window. You had to think how much correction on the steering wheel, how much pressure on the gas or on the brake, or how to stay on the line, how to keep straight. And little by little, those things started to become automatic, and you started to relax a little bit, and everything just sort of happened. And that's kind of the same thing that that a lot of the athletes go through too. You learn a new skill, and there's a learning curve, and you've got to sit there and you've got to learn the mechanics. You've got to understand why you do what you do, and little by little, you get into that stage where you become subconsciously competent, right? Where all of a sudden everything just happens by itself, and you just think about hitting the targets. But in the early stages, it's complicated because there's this balance about, am I standing correctly? Am I facing correctly? Is my balance correct? Is my this? Am I picking up the target correctly? Am I executing correctly? There's too much conscious thought. But and unfortunately, what my experience has shown over the years is a lot of people get stuck in that conscious state where they just keep thinking through it, and as long as they're thinking about it, they can do it. It's a big leap of faith to step over that line and say, just trust it, just go after it, just do it.
Is there one thing you can do with an athlete to get them to jump into that leap of faith?
That's probably different for everybody, for each person. Some people it's very easy. You let them do it enough times, and I try to change things up in the way we train. I don't like to train specifically skeet, standing on stations and shooting everything else. I sort of move them around in all different places. I move them around to make them better shots, to make them better gun handlers. So we shoot targets from a lot of different positions where it's unknown. You don't know the lead at this station. You don't know how to stand here. You don't know anything. You have to just you have to be able to go back to some core set of skills and figure it out. And so I like to do a lot of that, to try to teach them to be a lot more subconscious in their shooting as opposed to trying to measure things and calculate.
So they become more intuitive. Okay. So you've got this athlete who's performing very intuitively, and they go to a competition, and all of a sudden it's just like they forgot everything. What do you do to rejig that?
Oh boy. Again, everyone's a little different. In getting to know all of my athletes, the more I spend time with them, the more I know them, the more I know their little buttons to push and everything. And we all have our little things that we do to try to get them back into that zone state, that zone, because all they've done is they slipped out of that little state, and now they're starting to think about what they're doing. It's like if you start off and you miss a couple targets early in the round, you've already talked yourself into like a 20 or a 19 already, because you're still thinking about all the shots ahead of time and everything else. So to try to get them back to staying in the moment and to micromanage and stuff, one guy likens himself to a gunfighter, where he sort of let two gunfighters face off in the middle of a street, and they draw. One guy spins the gun, on his finger, and he puts it back in his holster. So I'll do that with one of them. As soon as he looks over at me, and he knows I'm watching, so he'll look over at me at the round just when some incident has occurred or something that's got him out of that zone feel. And I'll do that little spinning, pretend that little spinning on my finger, and like as if I'm holstering a handgun. And all of a sudden snaps him right back to where he should be. He knows exactly what's happened, and he gets right back to it again. So some of the different guys, one guy has another thing about canoeing, so I'll do a little motion as if I'm paddling a canoe, and that instantly clicks him back. So they all have some little thing like that.
So when they look around at you, you've built this kind of trust that you're not going to be having a meltdown yourself. I take it.
Oh, exactly. You have to be their rock, right? They have to look to you to find motivation, confidence, and trust. So
clearly you have some Don's rules that you follow in terms of your training process. What would be the top 3 or 4 rules that really guide you and are your guiding principles?
First one, I use an analogy from A Christmas Carol, Scrooge, where the first ghost that comes to visit Scrooge is his old ex-partner, and he's covered in chains and boxes that he's dragging along behind him, which are all the people he's cheated and things he's done throughout his life, and these are all his curses that are dragging him. And I see guys like that all the time. They're walking around the field and they have this big line of chains and boxes behind them, and they're all, and this is, each box is something. Oh, it's the wrong ammo. Oh, I didn't bring my favorite shoes. Or it's too windy, it's too sunny, it's too cloudy, it's too rainy, it's too something. All the reasons and excuses you have for not doing well today, or justifying a really shitty performance. And yet you have the key to this chain of all these boxes and everything else. And you can either choose to add boxes to it and drag more crap around with you, or you can continue to drag the one you have, or you can unlock this stuff and leave it behind and go. It's up to you. You choose which one you want to do. So when people start complaining about situations, conditions, and everything like that, I usually remind them of that. Another thing that I would do is everybody wants success very quickly. They don't like the work. So I always remember a particular story about a martial arts fighter that wanted to be the best, and everybody told him he should go to this village and to this big city and get this great master to teach him. And the guy says, well, I'm ready to work really, really hard. Says, how long will it take for me to be the best in the world? He says, 10 years. He says, 10 years? Oh my God, 10 years of my life. And he says, well, what if I only sleep 4 hours a day and only eat 1 cup of rice a day and train all the other times? How long will it take? He says, 15 years. And then he says, but I'll just sleep 1 hour a day and I'll just half a cup of rice and I'll train all the other time of the day. How long will it take? He says, 20 years. He says, Master, I don't understand. Why is it that the harder I work, the longer it's going to take? He says, because when you have one eye on the goal, you only have one eye with which to find the path. So I'm always keeping their mind, stay in the moment, do what you do right now, micromanage, do what you do right here on this particular station, on this particular shot. Well, the results will take care of themselves. Don't worry about that. That'll be an outcome of your good management process that leads up to that.
Well, so I've been working with you some time and with your athletes as well. And I noticed that when we have a clinic, it's not just me there. It's not just you there working with their technique, but you bring, dietitians, and I think you're bringing a hypnotherapist, and you're bringing various other professionals into your athlete's realm. And I'm wondering, why do you do that?
I think the game's changed quite a bit from my time when I was competing. People competed into their 50s. There was one trap shooter, Michel Carrega, I think he was in his 50s, and he was still a world champion. Nowadays, you just have to be a more all-round athlete. The standards are very high, the scores are very high. You just have to look at the whole picture. You have to look at nutrition, you have to look at fitness. The psychological side of what you're doing too it's very, very complex. So the people who are very successful at the sport seem to be getting younger and younger. So we have to focus on all of that. We want to make sure I have a nutritionist that's put together a travel kit for all of our guys. So when they travel, they have food replacements. They have treatments if they get sick for any reason, or if they get bug bites or whatever they have, that they can travel with and stay healthy. The fitness guy talks about the core, like balance, core strength, all the little necessary aspects of our thing. The hypnotherapist guy, he talks about, between you and the hypnotherapist, because we try to sort of get them in that nice relaxed state so that they start to understand a little bit more about how to stay in the zone, what it means to stay into this zone, and how to manage your thought process through this whole round, how to manage your rounds.
You mentioned a kit that your athletes take to international championships. So what's the importance of that?
Well, you go to a new climate. You've trained for something for 4 years, and you go to some hot country with a strange diet and everything, and you go and you get a stomach bug. or worse. And all of that training, all that time, all that money is out the window. It's done. You're not at your best. So we try to give them every opportunity to be at their best anywhere they go in the world. So reduce the opportunity, the possibility of getting sick.
So again, we work together. You've surely taken some things from our workshops. What's the key thing that perhaps I presented that has worked the best for you, best for your athletes?
Oh, I love the idea of dealing with self-talk. Because when you're out there, you're out with your worst enemy and your best friend all at the same time when you're competing. And that best friend can either keep you in the right state of mind and have you succeed and excel and do really well, and he can also talk you out of everything and make you fail. So how you talk to yourself and what you say to yourself is critical. So and everybody again is an individual. They're all a little bit different, and I love what we've gotten out of your courses and everything about that.
So if you have somebody who's clearly muttering and talking to himself and beating himself up, how do you get them to what you described before, that more intuitive nature where they give up on the self-talk and just perform?
Well, that comes into preparation. I think that's where when we do the hypnosis training and relaxation training, and getting into that zone state training and everything else. Learning what motivates you, what your triggers are, what turns you on, what to recognize the signs of slipping out of that zone feel, and knowing not to mess with it when it's there. Just sit back and enjoy the ride. Like, figure it out later, but don't interfere and says, I wonder why I'm doing so well. You know?
that is the curse of death when you that little self-talk comes in and you go, and then it all crumbles. So one more question here. You have the next Olympics coming up, not the delayed ones, but the next ones, and they're for 4 years off. And you have to earn some quota spots. What is your thinking as a coach as you prepare for those next 4 years?
Well, we've had people who've been involved in the sport for a number of years, and they're kind of set in their ways, and it's really hard to go in and change them too much. I mean, you can offer some suggestions and you can help them along a little bit, make small changes, but as a body, they are very much their own person, and they're a little more resistant to change. I'm lucky enough that we have some younger people who are coming up and haven't been involved in that sport too much. So we've been able to mold them from the beginning. So I've got them doing good training regimes, good plans, good preparation, following a good model and their goal is to be ready for Paris. And we have two that I think are going to be really, really good.
And assuming they prepare the way you've got them preparing, what is your expectations from them? This is maybe you're put on your prediction hat, but what's your...
Well, that's a dangerous thing to go to, right? I don't know. Just from what I've seen from the way they have been performing now, they're performing very, very well, and they've got really a good head about them. They're very meticulous in their preparation. They're always looking to get a little bit better, and that's only going to improve. And they just need a little more experience and a little more exposure to that level of competition, being in a few more finals. Getting on the dance floor is one thing, knowing how to dance is another. So so they've made it to a couple dance floors, but we still have to learn a few steps.
So I said that was one last question, but this is the final question. What would you recommend to coaches who are doing what you're doing, preparing athletes for 4 years? What's the one thing you'd recommend that can see where I believe they could see results at the end of this process?
I find a lot of the guys, you have to develop a level of trust with athletes. I've seen other coaches working with people, and they don't have that rapport. They don't have that connection with them. And people hold back information. They won't tell you everything. Like, it's like you go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist with a problem. They can only treat what you tell them, right? What you don't say, they don't. Same with a doctor or anybody else. And I find that with a lot of shooters too. So developing that trust, that point where they know they can come to you with anything, and that you're not going to preach to them. You're not going to say this is the way it is and everything. And you listen to what they have to say, and it's like understand before you want to be understood, sort of thing, and listen to them and let them, make them believe and know that they can trust you and you're on their side, and then you work together as a team. And I that's what I do in my teaching thing. I don't sit there and preach or anything. We go and we work together. We go out and we work on something, and I may suggest do you think this might be better if we tried it this way? Look, you've done it this way a few times and it hasn't been that successful, or it's successful 7 out of 10 times. That's not enough. We need it 10 out of 10 times. What do you think if we do this? You want to try that, And so the young guys are more receptive to that thing than some of the old guys are, who says, I'm happy with 7 out of 10 times,
So that in a competition, as you said earlier, they can look around and see you and trust that you've got their back.
That's right. We're on the same team together. We're working for the same goal, and I want them to achieve everything they want in their lives. So, and if I can help them do it, I'm there.
Well, thank you, Don. This has been a pleasure speaking with you.
It's been a pleasure too. I loved it. Anytime, Bob.
Okay, but we'll do this again sometime. We're closer to the Olympics.
Okay, let's hope I have some good news.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.